It was absolutely silent for one long second before the screaming began. In the abrupt bedlam, I could hear more than one person shouting my name, but more clearly than all the yelling, I could hear Edward Cullen's low, frantic voice in my ear. "Bella, are you all right?" "I'm fine." My voice sounded strange. I tried to sit up and realized he was holding me against the side of his body in an iron grasp. "Be careful," he warned as I struggled. "I think you hit your head pretty hard." I became aware of a throbbing ache centered above my left ear. "Ow!" I said, surprised. That's what I thought. His voice, amazingly, sounded like he was suppressing laughter. "How in the—" I trailed off, trying to clear my head, get my bearings. "How did you get over here so fast?" "I was standing right next to you, Bella," he said, his tone serious again. I turned to sit up, and this time he let me, releasing his hold around my waist and sliding as far from me as he could in the limited space. I looked at his concerned, innocent expression and was disoriented again by the force of his gold-colored eyes. What was I asking him? And then they found us, a crowd of people with tears streaming down their faces, shouting at each other, shouting at us. "Don't move," someone instructed. "Get Tyler out of the van," someone else shouted. There was a flurry of activity around us. I tried to get up, but Edward's cold hand pushed my shoulder down. "Just stay put for now." "But it's cold," I complained. It surprised me when he chuckled under his breath. There was an edge to the sound. "You were over there," I suddenly remembered, and his chuckle stopped short. "You were by your car." His expression turned hard. "No, I wasn't." "I saw you. All around us was chaos. I could hear the gruffer voices of adults arriving on the scene, but I obstinately held on to our argument. I was right, and he was going to admit it. "Bella, I was standing with you, and I pulled you out of the way." He unleashed the full, devastating power of his eyes on me, as if trying to communicate something crucial. "No!" I set my jaw. The gold in his eyes blazed. "Please, Bella." "Why?" I demanded. "Trust me," he pleaded, his soft voice overwhelming. I could hear the sirens now. "Will you promise to explain everything to me later?" "Fine," he snapped, abruptly exasperated. "Fine," I repeated angrily. It took 6 EMTs and 2 teachers, Mr. Varner and Coach Clapp, to lift the van far enough away from us to bring the stretchers in. To shift the van far enough away from us to bring the stretchers in. Edward vehemently refused his, and I tried to do the same, but the traitor told them I'd hit my head and probably had a concussion. I almost died of humiliation when they put on the neck brace. It looked like the entire school was there, watching soberly as they loaded me in the back of the ambulance. Edward got to ride in the front. It was maddening. To make matters worse, Chief Swan arrived before they could get me safely away. "Bella!" he yelled in panic when he recognized me on the stretcher. "I'm completely fine, Dad," I sighed. "There's nothing wrong with me." He turned to the closest EMT for a second opinion. I tuned him out to consider the jumble of inexplicable images churning chaotically in my head. When they'd lifted me away from the car, I had seen the deep dent in the tan car's bumper. A very distinct dent that fit the contours of Edward's shoulders, as if he had braced himself against the car with enough force to damage the metal frame. And then there was his family looking on from the distance, with expressions that ranged from disapproval to fury, but held no hint of concern for their brother's safety. I tried to think of a logical solution that could explain what I had just seen. A solution that excluded the assumption that I was insane. Naturally, the ambulance got a police escort to the county hospital. I felt ridiculous the whole time they were unloading me. What made it worse was that Edward simply glided through the hospital doors under his own power. I ground my teeth together. They put me in the emergency room, a long room with a line of beds separated by pastel-patterned curtains. A nurse put a pressure cuff on my arm and a thermometer under my tongue. Since no one bothered pulling the curtain around to give me some privacy, I decided I wasn't obligated to wear the stupid-looking neck brace anymore. When the nurse walked away, I quickly unfastened the Velcro and threw it under the bed. There was another flurry of hospital personnel, another stretcher brought to the bed next to me. I recognized Tyler Crowley from my government class beneath the blood-stained bandages wrapped tightly around his head. Tyler looked 100 times worse than I felt, but he was staring anxiously at me. Bella, I'm so sorry. I'm fine, Tyler. You look awful. Are you all right? As we spoke, nurses began unwinding his soiled bandages, exposing a myriad of shallow slices all over his forehead and left cheek. He ignored me. I thought I was going to kill you. I was going too fast and I hit the ice wrong. He winced as one nurse started dabbing at his face. Don't worry about it. You missed me. How did you get out of the way so fast? You were there, and then you were gone. Edward pulled me out of the way. He looked confused. Who? Edward Cullen. He was standing next to me. I'd always been a terrible liar. I didn't sound convincing at all. Cullen? I didn't see him. Wow, it was all so fast, I guess. Is he okay? I think so. He's here somewhere, but they didn't make him use a stretcher. I knew I wasn't crazy. What had happened? There was no way to explain away what I'd seen. They wheeled me away then to x-ray my head. I told them there was nothing wrong, and I was right. Not even a concussion. I asked if I could leave, but the nurses said I had to talk to a doctor first, so I was trapped in the ER, waiting, harassed by Tyler's constant apologies and promises to make it up to me. No matter how many times I tried to convince him I was fine, he continued to torment himself. Finally, I closed my eyes and ignored him. He kept up a remorseful mumbling. Is she sleeping? A musical voice asked. My eyes flew open. Edward was standing at the foot of my bed smirking. I glared at him. It wasn't easy. It would have been more natural to ogle. Hey, Edward, I'm really sorry, Tyler began. Edward lifted a hand to stop him. No blood, no foul, he said, flashing his brilliant teeth. He moved to sit on the edge of Tyler's bed, facing me. He smirked again. So what's the verdict? He asked me. There's nothing wrong with me at all, but they won't let me go, I complained. How come you aren't strapped to a gurney like the rest of us? It's all about who you know, he answered. But don't worry, I came to spring you. Then a doctor walked around the corner and my mouth fell open. He was young, he was blond, and he was handsomer than any movie star I'd ever seen. He was pale, though, and tired-looking, with circles under his eyes. From Charlie's description, this had to be Edward's father. So, Miss Swan, Dr. Cullen said in a remarkably appealing voice, how are you? Feeling? I'm fine, I said, for the last time, I hoped. He walked to the light board on the wall over my head and turned it on. Your x-rays look good, he said. Does your head hurt? Edward said you hit it pretty hard. It's fine, I repeated with a sigh, throwing a quick scowl toward Edward. The doctor's cool fingers probed lightly along my skull. He noticed when I winced. Tender, he asked. Not really. I'd had worse. He heard a chuckle and looked over to see Edward's patronizing smile. My eyes narrowed. Well, your father is in the waiting room. You can go home with him now, but come back if you feel dizzy or have trouble with your eyesight at all. Can I go back to school? I asked, imagining Charlie trying to be attentive. Maybe you should take it easy today. I glanced at Edward. Does he get to go back? Does he get to go to school? Someone has to spread the good news that we survived, Edward said smugly. Actually, Dr. Cullen corrected, most of the school seems to be in the waiting room. Oh no, I moaned, covering my face with my hands. Dr. Cullen raised his eyebrows. Do you want to stay? No, no, I insisted, throwing my legs over the side of the bed and hopping down quickly. Too quickly. I staggered, and Dr. Cullen caught me. He looked concerned. I'm fine, I assured him again. No need to tell him my balance problems had nothing to do with hitting my head. Take some Tylenol for the pain, he suggested, as he steadied me. It doesn't hurt that bad, I insisted. It sounds like you were extremely lucky, Dr. Cullen said, smiling as he signed my chart with a flourish. Lucky? Edward happened to be standing next to me, I amended, with a hard glance at the subject of my statement. Oh, well, yes, Dr. Cullen agreed, suddenly occupied with the papers in front of him. Then he looked away at Tyler and walked to the next bed. My intuition flickered. The doctor was in on it. I'm afraid that you'll have to stay with us just a little bit longer, he said to Tyler, and began checking his cuts. As soon as the doctor's back was turned, I moved to Edward's side. Can I talk to you for a minute? I hissed under my breath. He took a step back from me, his jaw suddenly clenched. Your father is waiting for you, he said through his teeth. I glanced at Dr. Cullen and Tyler. I'd like to speak with you alone, if you don't mind, I pressed.